Today, we will delve into the stories behind teenagers who have committed brutal crimes and are now facing life sentences. From chilling murders to unexplainable actions, they have destroyed not only their own lives but also the lives of innocent people. These criminals, will they regret their actions and recognize their guilt as they face a lifetime behind bars? Let's explore these bloody tales and the fate of these teens. Don't look away from this video. Welcome to Crimes Unearthed 911. 1. T.J. Lane. Chardon, Ohio. It was a typical morning. Students at Chardon High School were heading to class, unaware that a nightmare was about to unfold. The sound of gunshots shattered the peace of the campus, leaving 3 students dead. The shooter was Thomas T.J. Lane, a 17-year-old student who his friends and teachers had always considered normal. Before the incident, T.J. showed no signs of violence. After a minor argument with his family, he decided to take action. No one could have imagined that this seemingly trivial event would lead to such a brutal crime. On that morning, T.J. entered the school cafeteria, pulled out a gun, and began firing. The bullets not only took 3 lives but also left deep scars within the community. After the crime, T.J. didn't flee. He stood there, cold and unrepentant. His eyes were empty, devoid of emotion, as he waited for the police to arrive and arrest him at the scene. To him, this act seemed like nothing out of the ordinary. Although the defense argued that T.J. had psychological issues, the jury didn't believe this explanation. They couldn't accept that an ordinary teenager could kill 3 classmates in a matter of minutes. Due to the severity of his actions, T.J. was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. After his conviction, T.J. continued to display disciplinary issues in prison, including an escape attempt in 2014. However, he was recaptured shortly after. This showed T.J.'s determination and recklessness, with no sign of fear or remorse. What infuriated the community even more was that during his trial, T.J. Lane wore a t-shirt with the word killer printed on it. This act seemed to be a challenge to justice and highlighted his indifference and coldness towards the crime he committed. The public and those following the case were horrified by his attitude. With his life sentence, T.J. Lane will never have the chance to return to society. He has permanently erased a future, a life that was still full of potential, all because of a gun. The question remains, could there ever be a valid reason for this action? Can a child become a ruthless murderer over a small family argument? The answer may never be clear. 2. Gavin Ramsay. Wadsworth, Ohio. On a quiet night, when everyone in this small community was fast asleep, a crime took place that shocked them all. Gavin Ramsay, only 17 years old, broke into the home of his 98-year-old neighbor, Margaret Douglas, and committed an unimaginable act. Margaret Douglas, who lived alone in her small home, could never have anticipated that she would become the victim of such a brutal crime. Gavin, with a disturbed mindset, carried out the break-in. The event happened suddenly, without any warning. A child that the community once considered normal could commit such a vicious act. After the crime, Gavin didn't run away but calmly returned to his own home. The crime was only discovered when clear evidence linking him to it was found, including Margaret's wallet and photos Gavin had taken during the crime. This murder caused outrage and could not be accepted in any society. In the trial, although Gavin tried to justify his actions by claiming psychological issues, no one in the jury believed that this act could be excused. Due to the seriousness of the crime, Gavin was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. This case not only left Wadsworth in mourning but also raised questions about social responsibility in helping those with psychological issues, as well as protecting the elderly from such attacks. A young man, who could have contributed positively to society, destroyed his future and caused pain to a family, a community. 3. Lacy Schmidt. Harlem, Georgia. On a cold evening, January 31st, 2011, a brutal crime took place in a quiet house in Harlem, Georgia. Lacy Schmidt, a 14-year-old teenager, ended the life of his ex-girlfriend, Alana Callahan, simply because of an argument between them. Alana, also 14 years old, never imagined that their relationship would end this way. Schmidt, her former boyfriend, came to her house with a 9mm gun he had stolen from Alana's father's house. After a brief conversation, Schmidt pulled out the gun and shot Alana in the back of the head while she was sitting down. The gunshot immediately took Alana's life, and Schmidt didn't stop there. He dragged her body into a nearby forest, trying to stage a fake crime scene to mislead the police. He even claimed that the crime was committed by an unknown assailant, attempting to cover up the truth. However, undeniable evidence quickly forced Schmidt to change his story. He admitted that the murder occurred when he accidentally dropped the gun during their argument, and the shot unintentionally killed Alana. But no one in the community or Alana's family accepted this explanation. In court, Schmidt was convicted of murder, weapon possession during the commission of a crime, and theft. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The Harlem community was still in shock from the brutal actions of a child they once knew as a friend. A child who could have been learning and developing like any other, yet Lacy Aaron Schmidt destroyed his own life and took the life of a young girl over a small argument. With a life sentence, Schmidt will spend the rest of his life in prison. 4. Shondelle Jackson. Milwaukee, Wisconsin. On a summer evening in July 2009, when the city was peaceful and everyone had returned home after a long day, a horrific crime occurred that shook the entire community. Shondelle Jackson, only 19 years old, killed Nathan Potter, a University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee student, just for a robbery. Nathan Potter, 21 years old, was a kind and promising student. On July 6, 2009, as he was heading back to his apartment in the River West neighborhood, he had no idea that a nightmare was waiting for him. Jackson, along with his accomplice Derek Thomas, stopped him and demanded money. When Nathan had nothing to give, a fatal event unfolded. Jackson pulled out a gun and shot Nathan right on the street. The bullets took the life of a young man full of hope for the future, leaving his family and friends in unbearable pain. Jackson and his accomplice didn't flee immediately. Instead, they made the situation worse by trying to cover up their crime. The police quickly tracked them down and arrested both criminals. Shondelle Jackson couldn't justify his actions. He was just a young man who couldn't control his anger and lacked empathy, which led to the senseless death of an innocent person. In the trial, the jury didn't take long to decide that Jackson was responsible for Nathan Potter's death. He was convicted of first-degree murder and robbery. Regardless of any reasoning, Jackson's brutal actions could not be excused. This case not only shattered Nathan Potter's family but also raised questions about society, education, and the responsibility of young people. Can there be any reasonable explanation for this ruthless act? Or was it simply a loss of control in the moment, making one person pay with their entire life? 5. Chayen Merily Funes. Visalia, California. On a seemingly ordinary evening, a horrific crime changed everything. Chayen Merily Funes, 18 years old, along with her boyfriend Eddie Perez, committed a brutal murder that shocked the Visalia community and left a family in unrelenting grief. On May 28, 2017, Funes and Perez drove around the area near the home of Eric Fisher, a 35-year-old man. After a heated argument of unclear origin, they suddenly attacked the victim. Funes, in a moment of lost control, drove into Fisher, killing him instantly. But their actions didn't end there. Not only did they kill him, but Funes also reversed the car over Fisher's body, dragging him along the road in an attempt to cover up their tracks. After committing the crime, rather than fleeing the scene, Funes and Perez ran away, thinking they could escape their actions. But the truth couldn't stay hidden for long. The police quickly tracked them down and arrested the criminal pair. In court, Funes showed no remorse or regret. Her brutal actions left many unable to comprehend the motive behind it. Funes was convicted of second-degree murder, with an enhancement for using a deadly weapon and fleeing the scene after killing Fisher. Her sentence ranged from 16 years to life in prison. With a life sentence without the possibility of parole, Funes will face the consequences of her actions for the rest of her life. Will she change after serving her time, or will she continue living in the shadow of the crime she committed? 6. Colton Glenn or Vinita, Oklahoma. On an ordinary morning, while everyone was still asleep, a terrible crime occurred that shook the entire community of Vinita. Colton Glenn or, just 14 years old, took the life of his father's girlfriend, Laura Beth Hendricks, a 38-year-old woman. On August 22, 2016, or used a gun to shoot Laura dead in his own home. A senseless, brutal act took the life of an innocent woman. After committing the crime, instead of fleeing, Colton went to the local police station and turned himself in. He simply said, "I need a hug. I just shot and killed my stepmother," or showed no remorse. His explanation for his actions was that he claimed he had been abused, but the investigation later found no evidence to support this. Still, the fact that he killed someone could never be justified by any reason. The police quickly arrested Colton or, and after his trial, he was sentenced to life in prison, with the first 25 years without the possibility of parole. A child, not yet mature enough to understand the full consequences of his actions, had to pay the price for a horrific decision. During the trial, the victim's family spoke out, especially Laura Hendricks' father, who couldn't believe that his girlfriend's son could commit such a brutal act. The pain of losing a loved one is beyond words. 7. Philip Chisum. Danvers, Massachusetts. On an ordinary day at Danvers High School, an unimaginable nightmare unfolded. Philip Chisum, just 14 years old, took the life of his math teacher, Colleen Ritzer, a passionate and dedicated young woman. On October 22, 2013, after class, Philip followed Ms. Ritzer into the girls' restroom. There, in an unimaginable act of brutality, he attacked the teacher, strangled her, and stabbed her multiple times. In an instant, a young, hopeful teacher's life was taken by a student she once mentored. But the brutality didn't end there. After killing her, Chisum disposed of her body in a trash bin, dragged it out, and buried it in a nearby forest, attempting to erase the evidence. He wasn't just a criminal, he was a child who lost his humanity in that moment. Chisum's actions were beyond explanation, and when arrested, he showed no remorse or regret. During the trial, Chisum was convicted of first-degree murder and rape, and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He was also convicted for assaulting an officer while in custody. A child who should still have been in a classroom, dreaming of a bright future, chose to destroy his life and take someone else's life. This case was not only a tragic death but also a wake-up call about the potential for violence within the school environment, a place where no one could have imagined such an act occurring. 8. Dakota Lamar White. Perry, Georgia. On an ordinary day in Perry, a small, peaceful community, a horrific crime struck. Dakota Lamar White, only 17 years old, took the life of his classmate, Samuel Sam Paz, in an incomprehensible act. On October 15, 2016, Sam Paz, 18 years old, went to White's house after being asked to help with a computer issue. Sam had no idea that he would never leave that house alive. Along with his accomplice Brandon Warren, White planned and carried out the brutal attack. White and Warren strangled Sam and stabbed him multiple times, leaving the victim to die in agony. But what was even more terrifying was what happened next. After committing the crime, White and Warren felt no remorse. Instead, they dragged Sam's body into a nearby forest, trying to cover up their crime. But they couldn't escape forever. Undeniable evidence was found, and the police quickly apprehended both criminals. During the trial, White was convicted of first-degree murder and other charges related to hiding the body, tampering with evidence, and aggravated assault. Despite defense claims about White's living environment, his actions could not be excused. Dakota White was sentenced to life in prison without parole, with 10 additional years for the related charges. A young man, not yet mature enough to understand the full consequences of his actions, destroyed not only his own future but also the future of another family. 9. Raceland Martin. Fayetteville, North Carolina. On a summer night, while everyone in the neighborhood was quietly sleeping, an unimaginable crime occurred, leaving the entire community in shock. Raceland Martin, a 15-year-old teenager, took the life of his grandfather, Joseph Emmett Nulty, 63 years old, in a brutal act of violence. Around midnight on August 8, 2016, before committing the crime, Raceland shared his plan with a few people through the Kik app. He sent pictures of black gloves and an axe, tools he intended to use. In the weeks leading up to the event, he meticulously planned his actions with no signs of stopping. As the night fell, Raceland sneaked into his grandfather's bedroom, and in a bloody moment, he used the axe to attack Mr. Nulty. Although Joseph tried to fight back, Raceland's brutal actions ended the life of an elderly man within his own family. After the murder, he didn't run away but placed his grandfather's body in a room and continued living as though nothing had happened. The brutality of the crime was quickly discovered. After the murder, Raceland turned himself in to the police, showing no remorse, simply stating that he had killed his grandfather. The police quickly apprehended him, and the case went to trial. In court, no one could understand the motive behind the actions of a child who could commit such a brutal act against a family member. Raceland Martin was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison, with the possibility of parole after 25 years. This case not only shocked Fayetteville but also made people reflect on the violence and inexplicable behaviors in modern society. 10. Chayen Thompson. Indianapolis, Indiana. What seemed like an ordinary night at a gas station turned into a nightmare that no one could forget. Chayen Thompson, 17 years old, took the life of a gas station clerk, Aiden, 39 years old, simply for a brutal robbery. On the night of September 25, 2013, while the BP/Rickers gas station was in the middle of a night shift, Aiden, who had worked tirelessly to make a living, never imagined that the cruelty would come from a young man. Thompson, along with an accomplice, stormed into the gas station, threatening the employees and demanding cash. When Eye tried to resist or stop the robbery, Thompson brutally shot and killed her on the spot. But the horror didn't end there. Thompson and his accomplice quickly fled the scene, leaving behind a bloody crime. The police wasted no time in arresting them, and the case quickly gained public attention due to the brutality and senselessness of their actions. In court, Chayen Thompson could not justify his actions. He was convicted of first-degree murder and robbery. With a sentence of 110 years in prison, he would never have the chance to return to society. This murder deeply shocked the Indianapolis community, not just because of its brutality but also due to the failure to prevent violent acts like this from young people like Thompson. The family of the victim, Aiden's loved ones, could not overcome the pain of losing such a kind, hard-working woman. They demanded that justice be served and stated that there could be no excuse for this brutal act. The outrage and sorrow of the victim's family continued throughout the trial. With a sentence of 110 years, Chayen Thompson will face the consequences of his actions for the rest of his life. 11. David Meyers. Buffalo, New York. On a spring night, what seemed like a typical evening in South Buffalo turned into an unforgettable nightmare. David Meyers, a 19-year-old young man, took the life of his close family friend, Brian Dombeck, simply over a religious argument. On March 4, 2014, Meyers and Brian Dombeck were drinking together at Dombeck's house. The conversation slowly turned to religion, and their differing views led to a quick escalation. In a fit of rage, Meyers used a blunt object to attack Dombeck. The brutal blows ended the life of Dombeck, a 52-year-old man with a promising future. But Meyers' cruelty didn't stop there. To cover up his crime, he set fire to Dombeck's house, the flames engulfing the house and leading to the death of both Dombeck and his dog. Meyers didn't just kill, he destroyed everything within his reach, leaving the community shocked by his brutality. In court, he admitted his actions and expressed some regret, saying, "If I could go back, I would do everything differently. I deserve to be locked up." David Meyers was convicted of second-degree murder and third-degree arson. He was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 25 years. This murder shocked the Buffalo community, especially in South Buffalo, where many couldn't believe that a young man could take the life of his friend just over a small argument. 12. Timothy Mosley. Ohio, United States. On an ordinary night in Ohio, what seemed like a routine evening turned into a nightmare that no one could forget. Timothy Mosley, a 19-year-old young man, along with his accomplice Austin Meyers, committed a brutal murder, taking the life of an innocent victim just because of hate and violence. In May of 2012, Mosley and Meyers planned to commit a murder. They chose an innocent man to be the victim of their brutality. They attacked the victim mercilessly, with no justifiable reason, simply due to motivations no one could comprehend. Mosley and Meyers didn't stop but continued their violent assault. After committing the crime, they felt no remorse. They fled and tried to cover up their tracks. However, the truth couldn't stay hidden forever, and the police quickly apprehended both criminals. In the trial, Mosley pled guilty to murder and, as part of a plea deal, provided detailed testimony about his actions and his accomplice. He could offer no defense for his cruel and senseless actions. Mosley was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, paying the price for what he had done. This case not only shook Ohio but also forced the community to face questions about the impact of violence and how conflicts are handled in modern society. 13. Brian Lee Draper. Pocatello, Idaho. A chilling story of violence, discontent, and a friendship turned into a nightmare. Brian Lee Draper, 16 years old, and his best friend Tori Adamczyk, also 16, carried out an unimaginable murder, driven by an idea influenced by horror movies. On the night of September 22, 2006, Brian Draper and Tori Adamczyk went to the home of Cassie Jo Stoddard, a classmate at Pocatello High School, to pet sit while her family was away. At first, everything seemed normal. They watched a movie together, but what would happen next left the entire community in shock. After briefly leaving the house, Draper and Adamczyk returned in the dark, wearing masks to conceal their identities. Here, in a senseless and brutal act, Adamczyk stabbed Cassie Stoddard at least 29 times. Draper stood outside, acting as a lookout, an indifferent accomplice. The death of Cassie, an innocent young girl, ended in agony and bloodshed. After the crime, Draper and Adamczyk fled the scene, but they couldn't escape forever. Evidence was quickly collected by the police, and eventually, they were arrested. In court, Draper and Adamczyk showed no remorse for their actions. They admitted that they planned the murder, heavily influenced by the movie Scream, wanting to reenact the murder scenes from the film. Throughout the trial, the callousness and coldness of Draper and Adamczyk baffled the community. Both were convicted of first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder, receiving life sentences without parole. This case not only devastated Cassie Stoddard's family but also raised profound questions about the impact of pop culture on teenagers and whether society could prevent such senseless acts of violence. With a life sentence, Brian Draper will face the consequences of his brutal actions for the rest of his life. 14. Aiden von Grabow. Longmont, Colorado. A shocking story of a young man, not yet mature enough to understand the consequences of his actions, but willing to take the life of an innocent person. Aiden von Grabow, just 15 years old, killed Michaela Grote, a 20-year-old woman, in November of 2017, in an act of violence that defies explanation. On that fateful night, Aiden broke into Michaela's apartment. Although there was no clear relationship with the victim, Aiden's actions appeared to have been planned in advance. He attacked and stabbed Michaela multiple times until she became motionless, making her death sudden and haunting. After committing the crime, Aiden showed no remorse or fear. Police discovered that he had a kill list, which included Michaela's name. This revealed that Aiden had planned the murder for a long time, and Michaela was just one of the targets in a series of violent acts he intended to carry out. When arrested, Aiden did not hide his crime. In court, he admitted to the murder, and although psychological development factors were brought up, no one could excuse his brutal actions. Aiden was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, facing the consequences of the act he had committed. The case of Aiden von Grabow not only shocked Lamar but also forced the community to confront difficult questions about youth violence, the lack of supervision, and the factors that could lead to such brutal criminal behavior. 15. Lewis Daines. Grays, Essex, a chilling story of manipulation, violence, and the senseless death of a teenager. Lewis Daines, 18 years old, committed a horrific murder, taking the life of 14-year-old Breck Bidner, simply due to unclear reasons and the sinister manipulation of the internet. On February 17, 2014, Breck Bidner, a boy passionate about technology and online gaming, met Lewis Daines for the first time in real life. After chatting online for some time, Daines gained Breck's trust and convinced him to leave home and meet him in Grays, Essex. Despite Breck's family expressing concerns about this strange relationship, no one could have predicted that Daines' actions would end so bloodily. At Daines' apartment, Breck was attacked mercilessly. Daines bound Breck with tape and stabbed the 14-year-old boy 14 times in the neck. The attack happened quickly, and Breck died on the spot. After committing the crime, Daines showed no remorse. He even sent pictures of Breck's body to his online friends and called the police, admitting his actions. When asked about the reason for the murder, Daines calmly said, "My friend and I had a conflict, and I'm the only one left alive." No words of regret, no hint of sorrow, just coldness and indifference. During the trial, Lewis Daines was convicted of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 25 years before the possibility of parole. This murder not only shattered Breck's family but also sparked an outcry within the community about the dangers of online friendships with individuals who have malicious intent. With a life sentence, Daines will face the consequences of the brutal actions he committed. Today's stories serve as a warning about the brutality and devastating consequences of criminal acts. These teenagers have destroyed not only their own lives but also the lives of others, all because of senseless reasons and a loss of control. Can we prevent such crimes before they happen? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you won't miss the next stories from Crimes Unearthed 911. Thank you for watching.